5 telepathic signs. The real reason this person is constantly on your mind: psychology tricks. Love doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it returns quietly, again and again, until you finally pay attention. Have you ever noticed how one person can keep showing up in your mind like they own the place? Your day is packed. You talk to people. You handle responsibilities. Time moves forward, days into weeks. And still, that one person keeps resurfacing. Not because you decide to think of them, not because you're sitting around romanticizing the past. It happens in the middle of real life, while cooking, driving, working, or trying to fall asleep. And what makes it even stranger is this: you might not even want to think about them. Yet the moment you let your guard down, they appear again, like a signal cutting through the noise. It feels natural, automatic, almost like your mind is reacting to something it can't see, but somehow recognizes. Most people will tell you it's simple: attachment, memory, unfinished emotions, habit. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the pull isn't starting in you, but in them? In psychology, we know the brain is sensitive to emotional patterns, unresolved tension, and subtle cues we don't consciously notice. But there's also another idea many people quietly experience: a mental connection so persistent it feels like an invisible bridge, one that keeps activating without your permission. That's exactly what we're exploring here. 5 telepathic signs, quiet emotional signals that may explain the real reason this person won't leave your thoughts. And once you spot the signs, something changes. Confusion becomes clarity. Resistance turns into understanding. So stay with this, because one of these signs tends to hit hard, especially for men who've trained themselves to stay strong and ignore what they feel. Sometimes the mind doesn't repeat a person to torture you. Sometimes it repeats them to tell you something you've been avoiding. The first sign: their image appears during ordinary moments, never during intense emotions. The first sign is subtle, and because it is subtle, it is often dismissed, yet it may be the most revealing signal of all. This person appears in your mind during ordinary moments, not during emotional highs or lows, not when you are tired, restless, or searching for comfort, but when life feels level and unremarkable, when you are steady, focused, and present. Be honest with yourself. You are not lonely. You are not replaying old conversations. You are not scrolling through memories or wishing for something lost. You are simply living your day, driving, working, walking, thinking about nothing in particular, and then without invitation, without warning, their image enters your awareness. No song triggered it. No smell carried you backward. No clear memory opened the door. That is the detail you must not ignore. Thoughts born from personal emotion follow patterns. They rise when you feel absence, when desire stretches forward, when regret looks back, when stress lowers your guard. This thought does not behave that way. It arrives cleanly, unexpectedly, calmly. And because it breaks the usual emotional sequence, psychology asks you to look deeper. Don't assume every thought comes from within. Be precise, be observant. Modern psychology tricks teach us that the mind is not a closed system. It is responsive, receptive, and highly sensitive to subtle signals, especially when two people share emotional familiarity built over time. This is where female psychology often intersects with male experience in ways men are rarely taught to recognize. When someone thinks about you repeatedly, not casually but with emotional focus, their mind generates patterns, attention, memory, feeling that do not remain isolated. The brain emits measurable frequencies. Emotion sharpens those signals. And when two people have once aligned emotionally, those signals travel more easily between them, like a channel that never fully closes. That is not fantasy. That is mental resonance. You must understand this clearly. Alignment does not require constant contact, nor does it require conscious intention. It requires shared emotional history. When someone revisits moments with you in their mind, when they feel curiosity, warmth, or unresolved interest, their attention carries energy. If your subconscious recognizes that frequency, it responds before logic has time to interfere. That response is the sudden thought. This is why the moment feels neutral yet specific. You are not emotional, yet the image is vivid. You are not searching, yet the presence is distinct. Don't explain it away too quickly. Be still with it. This is not obsession. This is synchronization. Psychology tricks often reveal that the subconscious mind communicates in symbols and impressions long before words form, and this is one of those impressions. It suggests that your mental space is being gently activated from outside your conscious intent. That does not mean destiny. It does not mean fantasy. It means attention is being exchanged at a level beneath deliberate thought. Men are rarely taught how to recognize this because male reasoning is trained to value cause and effect. While these experiences operate through pattern recognition and emotional timing, areas often discussed more openly in female psychology but equally present in men. Notice how the thought does not demand anything from you. It does not ask you to act. It simply appears, like a tap on the shoulder of your awareness. That restraint is important. When the mind generates its own desire, it pushes. When a signal arrives from alignment, it waits. Be attentive to when it happens. Be attentive to how it feels. Calm, neutral, clear. That is the signature. This is also why this experience is often misunderstood in conversations about how to fall in love. Falling in love is not always loud. Sometimes it begins quietly, through repeated moments of mental presence that seem to come from nowhere but return again and again, patiently, consistently. Don't confuse this with fantasy. Fantasy escalates quickly and fades just as fast. This does neither. It remains steady. That steadiness tells you something important is active beneath the surface. Psychology tricks remind us that the subconscious mind responds to repetition, and when someone repeatedly holds you in their awareness, your mind begins to mirror that attention without effort. This is not control. This is connection. And connection, once formed, does not disappear simply because time passes. Be clear about this. You do not need to believe in anything mystical to respect the mechanism at work here. Emotional memory is real. Mental resonance is real. And the mind is far more relational than most men are taught to admit. When this person appears in your thoughts during ordinary moments, it suggests mutual relevance that has not expired. That relevance does not demand action, but it does deserve awareness. You must not rush to label it. You must not dismiss it either. Let understanding come before interpretation. This awareness gives you an advantage, not over them, but over your own confusion. It allows you to stay grounded while recognizing that attention flows both ways. And when you understand that, you stop asking why they are on your mind and start asking what kind of connection still exists beneath the noise of daily life. That question, asked calmly and honestly, is where clarity begins, whether the path leads forward, inward, or simply toward peace. The second sign, unexplained emotional shifts that mirror their inner state. The second sign is not visual, it is emotional, and because men are taught to question feelings before understanding them, this sign often goes unnoticed, even though it may be the most intimate of all. Pay close attention. Have you ever felt your emotional state shift without warning, without a clear reason you could point to, without an event to justify it? One moment, you are steady, focused, grounded in your routine, and the next there is a subtle heaviness in your chest, or a surprising calm that arrives out of nowhere, or a quiet sadness that doesn't fully belong to the present moment, or even a strange sense of comfort that feels personal but unexplained. Be honest. These shifts don't come with a story attached. They don't announce themselves. They simply appear. And only later, when your mind slows down, do you realize something important. These emotions seem to lead back to one specific person. That recognition matters. Coincidence does not carry emotional precision. Random moods scatter. This does not. When two souls maintain an emotional bond over time, through attachment, through shared pain, through longing, through unfinished conversations or unresolved endings, the emotional boundaries between them soften. They do not disappear, but they blur. That is how emotional transmission begins. You don't need to believe in anything mystical to understand this. Emotional memory lives in the nervous system, not just the mind. When two people once trusted each other emotionally, especially through vulnerability, honesty, or moments where defenses were lowered, the connection does not simply shut off because contact ends. Be clear about this. Closure is not the same as silence. Silence often preserves energy instead of releasing it. If important words were left unspoken, if truth was softened or delayed, if the relationship ended before understanding fully settled, the emotional channel stays open. That channel is where these unexplained emotional shifts travel. You begin to feel what they feel, not as a thought, but as a state. This is why the emotion arrives before the image. Your consciousness detects the change first. Rational thought comes later, trying to explain what the body already knows. Don't dismiss this as imagination. Be grounded, not dismissive. Psychology has long recognized emotional mirroring, the way deeply connected individuals unconsciously sync moods, stress levels, and emotional responses. Distance does not cancel this. Time does not erase it, especially when the bond involved mutual trust, especially when you were the one they felt safe opening up to. This is where many men misunderstand their own experience. A high-value man is taught to stay composed, steady, in control of his inner world. That discipline matters. But discipline does not mean disconnection. Emotional awareness is not weakness. It is calibration. If this person is currently struggling internally, missing you, replaying conversations, or thinking about reconnecting but holding back out of uncertainty or pride, your subconscious registers the signal before logic gets involved. That is why the emotion appears without explanation. That is why it feels borrowed. It doesn't match your current circumstances. It doesn't match your day. It doesn't match your thoughts. And yet, it is undeniably present. That is the clue. They enter your awareness not as a clear sentence, not as a memory you chose to revisit, but as an atmosphere that suddenly surrounds you. Your mind then searches for a source, and when it finds one, their image appears. This is not obsession. This is emotional resonance. Be careful here. Don't rush to act. Don't rush to label it destiny or nostalgia. Be still. A high-value man observes before reacting. He understands patterns before making moves. These emotional shifts are not instructions. They are information. They tell you that the connection is still active on an emotional level, whether acknowledged or not. This is also where masculine energy plays a quiet but important role. Masculine energy is not loud. It does not chase every feeling. It holds space. It stays centered while remaining perceptive. When you feel these emotional changes, your task is not to suppress them or dramatize them. Your task is to recognize them without losing your balance. That is power. That is clarity. Many men trying to attract women focus only on action, what to say, what to do, when to reach out. But attraction often moves first through emotional alignment, not strategy. When two people remain emotionally linked, the pull does not announce itself with urgency. It whispers through moods, through sensations, through moments where your emotional state subtly changes direction. Don't ignore that whisper, but don't obey it blindly either. You must understand it. This understanding keeps you from being reactive. It keeps you from projecting meaning that isn't there. At the same time, it prevents you from denying a connection that still exists. Be balanced. That balance is what separates a grounded man from a confused one. Over time, you may notice a pattern. The emotional shifts arrive when they are unsettled, or when they are thinking of you late at night, or when they are debating whether to reach out. You don't need proof. Patterns reveal themselves quietly. And once you see the pattern, you gain perspective instead of confusion. This perspective strengthens your masculine energy rather than disrupting it. It allows you to remain centered, while understanding that emotional bonds are not controlled by logic alone. They are lived, felt, and remembered. This is why men who truly attract women long-term are not the ones who deny emotion, but the ones who understand it without being ruled by it. A high-value man doesn't panic when emotions arise. He doesn't cling. He doesn't retreat in fear either. He observes. He integrates. He stays steady. These unexplained emotional shifts are not a call to action. They are a signal of unfinished emotional business that still exists on both sides, whether spoken or not. And once you recognize that, the confusion fades. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start understanding something meaningful once existed here, and part of it still does. That understanding gives you calm instead of tension. It gives you awareness instead of doubt. And from that place, whether you choose distance, reconnection, or quiet acceptance, you act from clarity, not impulse. That is how a man stays grounded, attractive, and emotionally intelligent without losing himself in feelings that were never meant to control him. If this message resonated with you, don't scroll past it. Pause, reflect, engage. Like this video to support the channel, subscribe for deeper insights into the psychology of connection, and share it with someone who needs clarity right now. Most importantly, comment this sentence below to anchor the awareness and start the conversation. What I feel without reason is often a connection, not a coincidence. The third sign, an unexplained magnetic pull that persists long after separation. The third sign is an unexplained magnetic pull that stays with you long after separation. This is where many men misunderstand what is really happening. Modern life teaches you that time dissolves everything, that distance deletes emotion, that silence erases connection. Yet your lived experience tells a different truth, a truer truth, one that psychology quietly confirms. When someone keeps appearing in your mind without effort, without intention, without benefit, it is not random. It is not nostalgia. It is not a mistake. It is the echo of an unfinished energetic exchange, the kind that forms when two nervous systems synchronize deeply and then separate without closure. That pull persists whether you want reunion or not, whether communication exists or not, whether pride says you have moved on or not, because the mind does not obey calendars. It obeys meaning, and meaning does not expire. As Carl Jung said, what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. This is why suppressing the thought only strengthens it, because the subconscious is still processing something unresolved, something incomplete, something that never reached emotional finality. Here is the critical point you must understand as a man who values clarity and strength. This pull is not proof of longing. It is proof of connection, and connection operates beneath logic. Ordinary attachment fades with routine, but deep bonds imprint the nervous system. They shape memory pathways. They wire emotional reflexes. When such a bond ends abruptly, asymmetrically, or without honest resolution, it does not dissolve. It goes dormant, and dormancy is not death. This is where Old Stoic wisdom becomes essential, because Stoicism never taught denial of inner experience. It taught mastery of response, and mastery begins with understanding the mechanism, not fighting it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Strength here means recognizing that recurring thoughts are signals, not commands, information, not instruction, evidence of an active psychological loop, not a directive to act. The real reason this person remains on your mind is that the bond was asymmetric at the end. One side carried unanswered questions, unspoken emotion, or unresolved identity attachment. Psychology is clear on this point. The brain seeks closure the way the body seeks balance. When closure is denied, the mind revisits the source repeatedly, not because you are stuck, but because the system is still attempting to complete the circuit. Men between 35 and 70 often experience this more intensely because with age comes deeper investment, fewer illusions, and a sharper awareness of what was real. When something real ends without resolution, the mind does not let it drift away. It keeps it nearby, not to torment you, but to teach you. This is where Stoicism win is achieved, not by chasing the thought, not by running from it, but by standing still inside it, observing it without judgment, extracting the lesson, and reclaiming your energy. Unresolved bonds drain focus, but understood bonds sharpen it. In modern life, where distractions are endless and silence is rare, These thoughts surface most clearly in quiet moments, during late nights, early mornings, long drives, or moments of stillness. Instead of labeling them as weakness, you must interpret them as signals of unfinished business within yourself, not necessarily with the other person, but within your own values, boundaries, and self-definition. Seneca said, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." This applies here because the suffering is not in the thought itself. It is in the resistance to understanding it. The magnetic pull persists because energy was invested without conscious retrieval, because meaning was assigned without conscious release, and because the mind respects significance, not time. This is why the other person may appear outwardly composed, successful, or forward-moving, yet still remain psychologically connected. Subconscious attachment does not announce itself. It operates quietly, influencing dreams, moods, and spontaneous recall. When one subconscious reaches outward, the other responds inward, not mystically but neurologically through mirrored emotional memory. This is not fate. It is not fantasy. It is the residue of synchronization, and synchronization leaves traces. The instruction here is clear. Do not interpret the pull as a command to return. Interpret it as a call to integrate, to close the loop internally, to reclaim the part of yourself that remained invested. This is iron mind work, disciplined, calm, deliberate. An iron mind does not panic at recurring thoughts. It studies them, and study leads to mastery. In practical terms, this means you do not indulge the narrative. You do not replay scenarios. You do not fantasize outcomes. Instead, you name the emotion, identify the lesson, and consciously redirect your energy into present purpose, because purpose is the antidote to unresolved attachment. Modern psychology agrees with Old Stoic wisdom. Attention shapes reality, and where attention goes, energy follows. You do not fight the thought. You outgrow it by building something larger than it. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. What you have to do is become a man whose identity is anchored in direction, not memory. Repeat this truth until it settles. The thought is not controlling you. It is revealing something you have not yet claimed. The bond is not owning you. It is asking to be understood. The pull is not weakness. It is unfinished integration. When you approach it this way, with Stoicism win discipline, the intensity fades naturally. Not because you forced it away, but because you completed what was left incomplete. This is mastery. This is victory. This is how men master life, by refusing to be ruled by confusion and choosing clarity instead. Old Stoic wisdom teaches you to stand firm inside your own mind. Iron mind strength teaches you to direct your inner world with authority. Stoicism win reminds you that real power is not emotional absence. It is emotional command. Understand the pull, integrate the lesson, reclaim your energy, move forward with purpose, because a man who masters his inner life is not haunted by the past. He uses it as fuel to build a stronger future. The fourth sign, they appear in your dreams or dominate your thoughts before sleep. The fourth sign is subtle, quiet, and powerful, and it shows up when the world finally goes silent, when they begin to appear in your dreams or quietly take over your thoughts right before sleep, because the moments before drifting off are not random at all. They are revealing, they are honest, and they are where the mind drops its daily performance and tells the truth without filters. During the day, logic runs the show, responsibilities shout, distractions pull you in 10 directions. But at night, all of that fades, and what remains is emotional residue, unresolved meaning, and the people who matter more than we admit. That is why when this person consistently enters your thoughts as your eyes close or steps into your dreams uninvited, it points to a deeper psychological exchange happening beneath awareness. Don't dismiss this as coincidence. Be aware. This is where psychology tricks quietly operate, not as manipulation, but as signals passing through the subconscious when conscious resistance is down. Dreams are not just images. They are emotional conversations without words. When you dream of someone repeatedly, your mind is not inventing them out of boredom. It is responding to stored emotional energy that has not been resolved or released. That is how telepathic style connections feel so vivid. They bypass logic and speak directly to emotional memory. Before sleep, the brain slows, defenses soften, and emotional awareness steps forward. That is when hidden thoughts surface, when unspoken exchanges resume, and when unfinished emotional business looks for a place to land. You must understand this clearly. The mind cannot maintain false narratives in these moments. At night, it shows you what truly occupies space inside you. If this person appears during that threshold between waking and sleeping, it means they are emotionally active within your internal world, whether you consciously invite them or not. And here is where it becomes even more interesting. This exchange often moves in both directions. If they are thinking of you before sleep, replaying shared moments, wondering what might have been said differently, or simply missing your presence in the quiet, that emotional signal does not disappear into nothingness. The subconscious mind is receptive. It picks up tone, memory, and emotional intent. This is why you suddenly think of them without effort. This is why their face appears without warning. This is why the connection feels strangely alive despite silence. Don't overthink it. Don't force meaning. Notice it. That is the rule. Psychology tricks work best when you don't wrestle them, when you allow awareness instead of control. In these moments, emotional frequency matters more than words. When logic shuts down, emotion speaks louder. That is not mysticism. That is how the human brain is wired. Research in psychology shows that the subconscious processes emotional bonds far more deeply during rest states, which is why dreams often revisit people connected to desire, curiosity, comfort, or unresolved attraction. This is where female psychology becomes relevant, because emotional memory and relational processing often deepen at night, when reflection replaces reaction. If a woman replays moments, feelings, or conversations before sleep, her emotional brain strengthens those neural pathways, making the person more present internally, even without contact. That doesn't mean obsession, it means emotional significance. Be clear about that distinction. Significance does not equal loss of control, it equals meaning, and meaning seeks expression. That is why you may feel pulled toward understanding how to fall in love, not through chasing, but through emotional presence that lingers even in silence. At night, the mind asks honest questions. It revisits moments that felt alive. It examines what felt unfinished. That is why unspoken connections don't fade easily. They transform into dreams, symbols, sensations. The subconscious does not forget emotional intensity. It stores it. It replays it. It tries to resolve it. If you wake up with a lingering feeling after dreaming of them, not confusion, but familiarity, warmth, or curiosity, that is emotional memory still active. Don't ignore it. Don't dramatize it. Observe it. That balance matters. This is also why attempts to suppress thoughts of someone often fail most intensely at night. During the day, distraction works. At night, truth returns. You must accept that. Psychology tricks like suppression, rationalization, or forced indifference collapse when the mind slows. What remains is what actually matters. And if this person shows up there, they are connected to a deeper emotional narrative inside you. The same applies in reverse. If they are lying awake thinking of you, the emotional echo doesn't need permission to travel. Human connection is not only verbal, it is emotional, symbolic, and stored in memory. That is why the connection feels real. That is why it doesn't require constant contact to stay alive. That is why silence can still feel full. Be calm with this knowledge. Don't rush to label it. Don't demand immediate outcomes. Understand the mechanism instead. Nighttime thoughts and dreams are not commands. They are messages. They are signals pointing to emotional relevance. In the context of psychology tricks, this is not about control, but about awareness, knowing that the strongest bonds are often felt when no one is performing, impressing, or trying. Female psychology often emphasizes emotional continuity, meaning feelings don't end when conversations do. They settle, they deepen, they resurface in quiet moments. That insight alone changes how you understand attraction and connection. If you are learning how to fall in love wisely, start here. Notice who appears when your mind has nothing to gain and nothing to prove. That is the real test. Dreams strip away ego. Pre-sleep thoughts remove strategy. What remains is emotional truth. And that truth doesn't shout. It whispers. It repeats. It waits. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to support the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who needs clarity, and subscribe for more insight into the mind, connection, and psychology tricks that shape our relationships. Now here's something powerful. Affirmations anchor awareness. Comment this statement below to lock this truth into your subconscious and strengthen your emotional clarity. Comment to remember. My mind is calm, my emotions are clear, and I trust the signals that appear in silence. Your thoughts before sleep reveal what truly matters. Engage with that truth. Let it work for you. The fifth sign, anticipation of their contact exists without evidence. The fifth sign is the quietest, the most subtle, and also the most misunderstood, because it does not arrive with proof, messages, or clear confirmation. It arrives as anticipation, as a calm inner sense that this person is about to reach out, that they are thinking about you, that something is forming even though nothing has happened yet. And many men immediately doubt this feeling because they were taught to trust only what they can see, hear, or measure. Don't dismiss this sensation too quickly. Be still with it. That is where understanding begins. This sign does not shout. It whispers. It shows up as a moment when you suddenly feel their presence mentally, when your attention drifts toward them without effort, when a quiet certainty appears without evidence. That is not imagination running wild. That is intuition detecting intention. You must understand this distinction clearly, because telepathic perception is not about predicting actions on a schedule. It is about sensing emotional direction. A person can want to contact you deeply and still not act. Desire and behavior are not the same thing. Intention carries energy even when action is delayed. That is the key many people miss. This is why the feeling is not false, even if the message doesn't arrive right away. Don't confuse timing with truth. Be patient with emotional signals. They operate differently than logic. When this anticipation appears, it often catches you off guard. You're not checking your phone obsessively. You're not forcing thoughts. The feeling simply arrives. That is important. Forced thoughts feel anxious. Intuitive awareness feels calm. That calm certainty is the difference. This is why men who cultivate presence and self-awareness experience this sign more clearly. A high-value man is not reactive. He notices patterns. He trusts his internal compass. He doesn't chase every thought, but he doesn't ignore meaningful signals either. This anticipation exists because something real is happening beneath the surface. The other person may be replaying conversations, considering reaching out, wondering how you're doing, or holding back words they want to say. And here is the part most people overlook. Wanting to connect does not guarantee immediate action. Pride creates barriers. Fear creates barriers. Circumstances create barriers. Life gets loud. Responsibilities pile up. Timing feels inconvenient. Still, intention remains active. Intention alone is enough to establish a mental connection. That connection doesn't require permission. It doesn't need a signal bar or typing bubbles. It exists quietly, persistently, and honestly. This is why they remain in your mind. Not because you are clinging, but because there is unfinished emotional movement between you. Think of intention like a current under still water. The surface looks calm, nothing seems to move, yet beneath it, energy flows. That flow is what you sense. Don't fight it. Don't dramatize it. Observe it. Be grounded. That is masculine energy at its best, steady, aware, unshaken. Men who live in that state don't need constant reassurance. They don't demand proof for every feeling. They understand that emotional reality often precedes physical action. This understanding alone shifts how you attract women, because emotional maturity is felt long before words are spoken. When you stop forcing outcomes and start respecting emotional processes, your presence becomes stronger, calmer, and more magnetic. Many men misunderstand this sign because they were taught that if something doesn't happen immediately, it must be imagined. That belief creates frustration. Don't fall into that trap. Be disciplined with your thoughts. That is strength. The anticipation you feel does not mean you should reach out impulsively or wait anxiously. It means you are aware of emotional movement. Awareness does not demand reaction. It invites patience. You must hold that line. A high-value man doesn't rush clarity. He allows it to reveal itself. This is how emotional authority is built, not through control, but through calm confidence. When you trust yourself, you don't need to chase confirmation. That trust is attractive. That is how you attract women without effort or performance. Your stillness does the work. Intuition is often described as a gut feeling, but that phrase undersells its sophistication. Intuition is the brain's ability to integrate emotional signals, memory, tone, and subtle cues beneath conscious awareness. When you sense someone is about to contact you, your mind may be responding to past patterns, emotional residue, or mirrored thought cycles. Humans are more connected than we admit. Shared emotional experiences leave traces. Those traces don't vanish just because communication pauses. They linger, they echo, and sometimes they activate anticipation. Don't mock that process. Respect it. Be curious, not reactive. That curiosity sharpens perception instead of dulling it. This is where masculine energy becomes crucial again. Masculine energy is not about force, it is about stability. It is the ability to remain centered even when uncertainty exists. When you feel this anticipation, don't collapse into waiting mode. Don't put your life on pause. Continue moving forward. Continue building. Continue choosing yourself. That is not indifference. That is self-respect. And self-respect changes how emotional energy flows between people. When you stay grounded, the connection either resolves naturally or releases without bitterness. Both outcomes are wins. That clarity is power. There is another layer here that deserves attention. Sometimes the anticipation appears repeatedly over time, not once, not twice, again and again. That repetition matters. One random feeling could be coincidence. A recurring calm certainty suggests an ongoing emotional loop between two people. That loop doesn't mean reunion is guaranteed. It means intention is alive on at least one side and often on both. Don't assume it's all yours. Emotional exchange is rarely one-directional, especially when two people share depth, vulnerability, or meaningful moments. Those experiences don't dissolve neatly. They transform, they wait, they resurface. This is why trying to suppress thoughts of someone often backfires. Suppression adds resistance. Resistance amplifies awareness. Instead, acknowledge the thought, then return to yourself. That balance is essential. High-value man behavior is not about denial. It's about integration. You can recognize emotional signals without being ruled by them. That emotional regulation is rare, and rarity is attractive. This is how you attract women without trying to impress. Calm presence communicates confidence more clearly than words ever could. Remember this: telepathic perception does not promise outcomes. It reveals intention. Intention may or may not become action, but intention explains presence. That explains why this person stays in your mind without effort. That explains why anticipation feels real even without evidence. Don't demand certainty where patience is required. Be grounded. Be observant. Be steady. That is masculine energy in action. That is how a high-value man navigates connection with clarity, dignity, and self-trust. The true explanation. Listen carefully. This reflects a reality most people never grasp. Listen carefully, because this is not about coincidence, fantasy, or mystery. It is about unfinished business inside the human mind, and once you understand this, you regain control. When someone is constantly on your mind, it is not because you are stuck. And it is not because time has failed you. It is because a psychological loop is still open, a chapter that has not been properly closed, and the mind, especially a disciplined mind, does not tolerate unresolved meaning. Psychology confirms this again and again. The brain returns to what lacks clarity, what feels incomplete, what still carries emotional charge, and as Carl Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This person represents an unanswered question, not a missing future. It may be about understanding what really happened, recognizing what you learned, reclaiming self-respect, or consciously deciding that the lesson is complete. This is where Old Stoic wisdom becomes a weapon, not a philosophy. The Stoics understood that the mind seeks order, and when order is absent, distraction takes over. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength is built by confronting the thought instead of resisting it, by extracting the lesson instead of replaying the memory, by deciding instead of drifting. In modern life, men are constantly pulled in 1,000 directions: work, responsibility, pressure, legacy, and unresolved emotional narratives drain focus without announcing themselves. That is why the thought returns during quiet moments, late nights, or moments of stress, not because the person is meant to return, but because the meaning has not been claimed. This is where Stoicism win becomes practical, not theoretical. You do not suppress the thought. You dissect it. You ask, what is unfinished here? Is it forgiveness? Is it clarity? Is it acceptance? Is it the need to stop judging yourself through the past? Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And this is exactly what happens when the mind keeps circling an unresolved story. The solution is not emotional indulgence. The solution is decisive understanding. Once the lesson is extracted, the mind releases its grip naturally. This is how an iron mind is forged, not by force, but by resolution, not by denial, but by awareness, not by nostalgia, but by mastery. In today's world, where distractions are endless and attention is constantly harvested, the man who can close psychological loops becomes unstoppable. He sleeps better, he focuses harder, he leads with calm. He does not confuse memory with destiny. Old Stoic wisdom teaches that attachment fades when meaning is fulfilled, and this truth does not age. You are not meant to chase closure from others. You create it internally. You decide when the story ends. You decide what it taught you. You decide what stays and what leaves. This is Stoicism when in action. This is how an iron mind operates under pressure. The thought loses power the moment you claim authority over its purpose. As Epictetus stated plainly, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. React with clarity. React with intention. React with strength. The mind returns to what is unfinished, but it bows to what is understood. Finish the lesson. Close the loop. Move forward clean. This is not about forgetting. It is about mastering meaning. And once meaning is mastered, the mind is free, focused, and ready to win. Hey, my friend, before we say goodbye for today, let me leave you with something simple but important. If someone keeps appearing in your mind, don't fight it, don't blame yourself, and don't label it as weakness. Thoughts come for a reason. Instead of resisting, pause and gently ask, what is this connection here to teach me? When the lesson becomes clear, the heart relaxes, and the mind naturally lets go of what no longer needs to stay. If that connection is meant to continue, it will continue calmly. If it's meant to end, it will fade in a peaceful and healthy way. Either way, you are not losing control. You are taking your power back. You are choosing awareness over fear and clarity over confusion. Take this advice seriously. Trust yourself, listen quietly, and allow life to unfold without force. That's where real strength lives. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this message helped you even a little, please tap the like button to support psychology and wisdom. And if you enjoy uncovering the deeper truths of the mind and human connection, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss insights that can truly change the way you see life.